Most people run from loneliness like it's a curse, like being alone is some kind of failure. They see silence as emptiness. But the strong, the rare, the dangerous, they understand something the crowd never will. Solitude is power. When you walk alone, you hear the truth louder, no noise, no fake compliments, no distractions, pulling your mind in 20 directions, just clarity, just focus, just you and your purpose. And that's why the ones who aren't afraid of solitude are the ones who become unstoppable. Because here's what most people don't realize. The crowd is comfortable, it's safe, it protects your ego. When you're in the group, you don't have to lead, you don't have to stand out, you don't have to be judged. But that safety comes at a price, and that price is growth. You can't grow while you're hiding behind noise. You can't evolve if you never face yourself. When you're alone, the masks come off. There's no one to impress, no one to perform for, no audience, just the mirror, just the raw truth. And in that truth, that's where you find your power. Because if you can face yourself, your fears, your past, your flaws, your insecurities, and still keep moving forward, that's strength most people never touch. Being alone doesn't make you weak. It makes you forged. The greatest ideas, the greatest breakthroughs, the greatest transformations, they don't happen in a crowd. They happen in the silence, in the stillness, in the hours where the world forgets you exist. That's where you train. That's where you study. That's where you sharpen your vision so clear, so unshakable, that no distraction can knock you off path. People will say, you've changed. They'll say, you're different. And they'll be right. Because you chose a path few have the courage to walk. You chose to separate, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Because the crowd was noisy and your calling was quiet. And you chose to listen to that quiet voice within the one that whispers, you were meant for more. You learn something when you walk alone. You learn that you don't need approval to be powerful. You don't need company to move forward. You don't need validation to be valuable. When you stand alone, you stand taller. When you walk alone, you walk farther. It's not easy. It's not meant to be. But ease never made empires. Comfort never built kings. What builds legends? It's the silent nights, the unseen work, the lonely roads. It's the decision to keep walking, even when no one's walking with you, even when no one claps, even when no one believes. Because here's the secret, solitude doesn't make you invisible, it makes you invincible. So let them fear being alone. Let them chase noise, crowds, and constant connection. You chase evolution. You chase discipline. You chase mastery. You choose silence. You choose growth. You choose to walk alone and rise beyond what anyone thought was possible. And when the time comes, when they see who you've become, they'll wonder how you did it. And you'll smile. Because the answer is simple. You were never afraid to walk alone. There's a certain kind of strength that's born when no one shows up for you, when no one checks in, when no one says, you got this. It's in those moments when it's just you, your pain, and your purpose that something powerful is forged. Not a smile for the camera, not a show for the crowd, but real, unshakable, inner strength. The people who fear loneliness will never understand this. They need the noise. They need the attention. They need someone around to tell them they're doing okay. And when that's gone, so are they. But the ones who've walked through the silence, who've sat with their own pain and didn't run, those are the ones you can't break. Because once you realize you can survive without anyone, you become dangerous. Not reckless, not arrogant, dangerous in your independence, dangerous in your clarity, dangerous because you are no longer waiting for anything external to fuel you. Your energy comes from within. Your fire is self-lit. Your drive isn't borrowed, it's built. Think about the greats, the real ones, the legends. Their power didn't come from popularity. It came from isolation, from rejection, from doubt, from walking through seasons of life where it was just them and the grind. They didn't collapse, they constructed. While the world was looking away, they were building, becoming, evolving. Solitude doesn't soften you, it solidifies you. When you train alone, your focus is different. When you fail and there's no one to catch you, your bounce back is different. When you succeed and no one notices, your humility is different. You're not doing it for likes. You're not doing it for noise. You're doing it because something inside you refuses to settle, refuses to stop. That's the kind of person that lasts, that thrives, that leads. Because in life, there will come a time when you are truly alone, when the calls stop, when the claps fade, when the world goes quiet. And in that moment, if you've built your strength on people, you'll fall. But if you built your strength on purpose, you'll rise. You'll walk into that silence like a warrior, calm, focused, unbothered, because you've been here before and you know how to move in the dark. You know how to sharpen your mind when no one's watching. You know how to keep pushing when there's no applause, no recognition, just the raw grind. That's the edge of the lone wolf. That's what makes them unbreakable. They don't need to be carried, they carry themselves. They don't crumble in silence, they thrive in it. They don't beg for support, they become it. So the next time life gets quiet, the next time people disappear, the next time you're forced to face yourself alone, don't panic. Don't fold. Stand up, straighten your back, lock in, and remind the world you may be alone, but you are never weak. You are alone, but unbreakable. Most people never find their gift, not because they don't have one, but because they never slow down long enough to hear it. They drown it out with noise, with distractions, with crowds that clap for their mask instead of their mission. But those who walk alone, they find it. Because solitude isn't just quiet, it's revelation. It's exposure. It's transformation. When you're finally alone, the voices fade, the expectations fall off. You don't have to perform. You don't have to be liked. And in that space, that stillness, you start to hear something real. Your calling. See, most people live their whole lives in reaction, reacting to what the world wants, to what others expect. But you, when you're alone, you stop reacting and start reflecting. You start asking the hard questions. What am I here for? What am I willing to fight for? What's the fire that never dies inside me, no matter how cold the world gets? You won't find those answers in a crowd. You find them in the silence. You find them in the hours when the world forgets your name. You find them when you're brave enough to sit with your own thoughts and not run. And that gift, it's not always loud. Sometimes it shows up as a whisper, as an idea, as a conviction that refuses to die, even when everything else does. That's why solitude is sacred, because it clears out the lies so the truth can breathe. Don't get it twisted. Being alone doesn't mean being lost. It means you're on a different frequency, a higher one. You're not tuning into drama. You're tuning into destiny. You're not running from pain. You're mining it for purpose. That's the gift of solitude. It reveals your edges. It shows you where you're soft, where you've been faking strength, where you've been too dependent on the noise to feel valuable. And it gives you a choice: evolve or repeat. Stay stuck in the cycle or break out and become something more. And once you start discovering that inner fire, that real gift, you no longer chase validation. You no longer need to be seen to feel real, because now you move with vision, with intention, with a force that isn't built on applause, but alignment. You start building in silence. You stop oversharing and start over-delivering. You realize the gift wasn't out there, it was always in you, buried beneath layers of noise, of opinions, of pressure to fit in. But now that you're alone, you've peeled it all back. And what's left is pure, untouchable, undeniable. This is why the strong walk alone. Not because they hate people, but because they love purpose more than performance. Because they understand that sometimes you have to disappear from the world to finally discover yourself. Sometimes the greatest act of power is choosing solitude over approval, stillness over spotlight, alignment over attention. And once you find your gift in solitude, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You just move different. You speak less and execute more. You stop explaining your value and start living it, because the gift has spoken. And once you hear it, you can't go back. So next time the world goes quiet, don't panic. Don't run back to the crowd. Sit with it, feel it, and listen, because hidden inside that silence is the voice that's been waiting to lead you all along. You don't become strong under the spotlight. You don't become disciplined when everyone's cheering. You don't find power when the crowd is hyping you up. You build it in the dark, in the lonely hours, in the cold seasons when nobody claps, nobody calls, and nobody cares. That's where the real work happens. That's where warriors are forged. Everybody wants to be seen, but nobody wants to suffer in silence. Nobody wants to wake up early when no one's watching. Nobody wants to do the reps in the gym when the results don't show. Nobody wants to say no to comfort when no one's around to praise the decision. But the ones who do, the ones who grind in that darkness, quietly, consistently, with no applause, those are the ones who rise. You have to understand something. Greatness is not public. It's private first. It's invisible before it's undeniable. Before they call you gifted, you have to grind like you're forgotten. Before they call you genius, you have to work like you're invisible. And before they say you're great, you must prove it to yourself, not once, but every day in the dark. That's the difference between the loud and the legendary. The loud are chasing attention. The legendary, they're chasing legacy. They know the dark is not a place to fear, it's a place to build, a place to be honest, a place to face the weak parts of yourself without distraction. No hiding, no pretending, just the raw, brutal truth. It's in the dark that you learn how to keep promises to yourself. Not for a post, not for validation, just because you said you would. And that's where confidence comes from. Not from the crowd, from self-respect, from knowing you're the kind of person who shows up even when no one else does. People ask, how do you stay so focused? Simple. You trained in the dark. They ask, how do you stay disciplined when nobody sees you? Simple. You've already seen what happens when you don't, because you lived in that silence. You've suffered through the grind. You've walked through the valley with no applause, no handouts, no help, and you kept going. You didn't need light. You didn't need a stage. You didn't need attention. All you needed was a vision and a vow to never stop. And that vow, that's what separates the temporary from the timeless. You don't brag about what you're building. You don't broadcast your goals. You just stack wins, one after another, in the dark, quietly, relentlessly. Because when the light finally comes, and it will, they won't believe how fast you rose. But you'll know the truth. It wasn't fast. It was years in the shadows. Years of silence. Years of grinding. Years of building brick by brick with no cheers, no shortcuts, and no backup plan. That's what it means to be built in the dark. And when you finally step into the light, you won't need to prove anything because your work will speak and it'll be loud enough for the whole world to hear. Being alone doesn't mean you're lost. It doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you've missed your path. In fact, being alone might be the clearest signal that you're finally on the right one, because the path to greatness isn't crowded. It's quiet. It's raw. It's uncomfortable. But it's where your soul starts speaking clearly. Most people think if they're not surrounded, they're off track. If they're not followed, they must not be leading. But listen carefully. Some journeys aren't meant to be shared. Some roads are meant for one set of footsteps, yours. And that's not weakness. That's strength that few ever tap into. You were born with a compass, not a crowd. See, when you're surrounded by people all the time, it's easy to get pulled in their direction. Their pace becomes your pace. Their doubts become your ceiling. And their expectations become your prison. But when you step away, when you go quiet, something powerful happens. You hear your own rhythm again. You rediscover what lights you up. You remember what breaks your heart. You reconnect with the battles you were meant to fight, not the ones you were told to. And once that clarity hits, there's no going back. You realize you've been crowded for too long, guided by noise, not vision. That's when you start leading yourself. And in that moment, you're not lost. You're found. The world will look at your solitude and call it strange. They'll say, you've changed, as if that's a problem. But growth always looks like loss to those who don't understand it. They'll see you withdraw and think you've fallen, but the truth is you've risen. You've risen above distraction, above neediness, above dependency. Because when you can stand without leaning on anyone, that's not loneliness, that's leadership. It takes courage to walk a path when there's no signpost, no cheering squad, no map. But what's waiting on the other end? Freedom, identity, impact. You'll build things others only talk about. You'll move with purpose while they move with the crowd. You'll grow while they stay stuck trying to please. And yes, there will be days when it hurts. Days when the silence feels too loud. Days when you wonder, am I really doing the right thing? That's normal. But here's your anchor. You didn't choose this path because it was easy. You chose it because you're built for more. So when doubt creeps in, when it feels like everyone else has company and you've only got your calling, remember this: you are not behind. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are refining. You are evolving. You are walking the road that was made for you and only you. Let them take the crowded path. You were made to walk alone and never lose your way. There's a type of strength that doesn't shout. It doesn't show off. It doesn't need to be seen because it's too busy being built. That strength is born in silence, forged in solitude, grown far away from the applause, the cameras, the noise. The loudest person in the room is often the weakest. They need the room. They need the reaction. But the ones who are dangerous, the ones you never see coming, they don't talk, they move quietly, precisely, powerfully. Because real strength has no need to prove itself. It just shows up and dominates when the time comes. This is the kind of strength you build when you're alone. It's not given. It's earned in the hours you spend sharpening your mind when everyone else is distracted. It's earned in the choices you make when no one's watching, the small disciplines that add up to massive shifts. It's built through the silence you refuse to run from, the silence you choose to sit in and grow through. People think silence is weakness because they've never faced it. They avoid it. They fill it with noise, with company, with anything to avoid hearing their own voice. But the strong, they embrace it. They let silence expose them, and then they use what they find to build, to evolve, to ascend. You see, silence forces you to listen not just to what's around you, but to what's inside you. The lies, the fears, the excuses, all of it comes to the surface when it's quiet. And if you're bold enough to face it, if you're relentless enough to work through it, you come out the other side with something unshakable. That's why the most dangerous people are the quiet ones. They don't need to react. They don't need attention. Their power isn't external, it's internal, anchored, rooted. You can't rattle them because they've already wrestled with their demons in silence and won. Strength in silence is what keeps you going when motivation fades. It's what steadies your hands when the pressure hits. It's what holds your ground when the world tries to pull you in every direction. While others panic, you stay poised. While others seek noise, you find clarity. Because silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of focus. It's the space where strategies are born, where dreams get defined, where greatness gets planned, measured, and executed. So no, you don't need to post every move. You don't need to prove every point. You don't need to make noise to be noticed. All you need is silence and the discipline to honor it, to protect it, to work inside of it until the results speak louder than your words ever could. The world will ask where you've been. They'll wonder how you got so sharp, so grounded, so focused, and you'll just smile because while they were talking, you were training. While they were searching for noise, you were building in silence. And now, that strength, it speaks for itself. The moment you stop needing a crowd is the moment you become limitless. Because most people are still stuck in the loop of validation, waiting for approval, waiting for permission. But when you break free from that cycle, when you stop asking, stop explaining, stop proving, everything changes. You stop moving for them and start moving for you. No crowd means no pressure to perform, no expectations to fake, no obligation to shrink or stretch just to fit in. You can finally move at your own pace, in your own lane, with your own mission locked in. And when you move like that, you're not just powerful, you're untouchable. You see, the crowd creates limitations. It teaches you to compare, to measure your worth by how many claps you get, to judge your progress by how many are watching. But once you detach from that system, once you realize you don't need eyes on you to be excellent, the ceiling disappears. No more filters, no more masks, no more holding back so people don't feel uncomfortable around your ambition. Just raw movement, raw growth, raw hunger. It's in that solitude that your capacity expands. You learn to be your own coach, your own motivator, your own reminder that you were born for more. You start pushing boundaries not because someone's watching, but because you know what you're capable of, and that knowledge becomes your engine. And when no one's around to clap, you clap for yourself. When no one's around to validate, you validate through action. When no one's watching your grind, that's when you grind harder. Because that's the test. Can you be consistent when there's no credit? Can you be great when greatness isn't trending? Can you chase your purpose when nobody's checking your progress? The moment you answer yes, that's the moment you become unstoppable. Because now your limits aren't set by others. They're shattered by your discipline. The crowd said, "You can't." You said, "Watch me." The crowd said, slow down. You said, not a chance. The crowd waited for signs. You became the sign. Now you move differently. You think bigger. You execute sharper. Not because someone's counting on you, but because you've counted yourself in. That's where the real shift happens. When your identity is no longer tied to who sees you, but who you're becoming in the dark. When your performance isn't for attention, it's for alignment. That's not ego. That's evolution. You don't need a crowd to chase your dream. You don't need an audience to activate your potential. You just need clarity, commitment, and the courage to keep going. When it's quiet, no crowd means no distractions, no limits, no excuses. Just you raw, focused, unfiltered, and that's the version of you the world won't be able to handle. There comes a moment when the world looks around and asks, where did they come from? They don't remember the nights you spent in silence. They didn't notice the sacrifices, the discipline, the choices you made when no one was watching. But you remember, because while they chased applause, you chased purpose. While they followed the herd, you followed your hunger. And now you rise. You didn't become powerful because someone gave you permission. You became powerful because you stopped waiting. You stepped into the unknown. You embraced the quiet. You built your empire in the absence of applause. And now they finally see you, but it's too late to catch up. That's the rise of the lone wolf. You walk different, you speak less, you move with intention, not because you're cold, but because you've been through the fire. You know what it feels like to be left out, counted out. But instead of folding, you forged. You found strength in isolation. You turned rejection into fuel. You learned to depend on no one. And in doing so, you became dangerous. Not to the world, but to limitation, to excuses, to the small version of yourself you left behind when you chose to walk alone. You're not the same anymore. You've shed the need for approval. You've severed the chains of people-pleasing. You've outgrown the environments that tried to contain your evolution. Now, you lead. And leaders aren't always loud. Sometimes they're silent. Sometimes they walk ahead alone through darkness, through chaos, through resistance, because they know the rest will follow once the light comes. The rise of the lone wolf isn't about ego. It's about identity. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's about reclaiming your pace, your power, your path. It's about understanding that solitude was never your punishment, it was your preparation. The lone wolf doesn't need the pack to move. The lone wolf doesn't need direction to hunt. The lone wolf doesn't need recognition to evolve, because the lone wolf is the storm, quiet, focused, relentless. So let them wonder how you did it. Let them whisper. Let them speculate. You don't owe them answers. Your growth is the answer. Your focus is the answer. Your rise, silent, steady, unstoppable, is the answer. You walked alone. You grew alone. And now you lead alone. Because the lone wolf never needed a crowd, just a reason. And now that you've found it, there's nothing left that can stop you.